transformations of functions. So this is A level. So if you're thinking about back to GCSE or transformations of graphs, you need to learn that little key that you will have been given in class that tells you really what the numbers inside the bracket or outside the bracket indicate. So if we have a look at part A, so this is sketch the graph of y is equal to f of x divided by 2. So that's this one here. So that really means you're stretching it along the x-axis. If anything is inside the bracket, it's going to affect x. That's the first thing to remember. And it's the reverse really of what's in the bracket. So because it's dividing by 2 in the bracket, it means you need to multiply by 2. So it means you're going to double everything. So effectively, it's the reverse of what's inside here. So you're going to multiply each of these coordinates by 2 basically. So it's going to be stretched on the x-axis, which is the one going from left to right. So it's going to become like a wider graph, okay? So it's actually going to become the same height. That's what's important here. We're not actually going to touch 5. It's only the x coordinates that are going to change, okay? So we're going to have everything is going to be a little bit sort of wider, if that's the best way to describe it, but it's going to come to the same height if you can do that, and then out wide, okay? So your coordinates here will be 12 and 0 to indicate it's doubled. Your coordinates here will be -4 and 0 to indicate that it's doubled. And again here, 4 and 5 to indicate the x coordinate is doubled, but not the y coordinate. See, the height of the graph is still going to remain the same. If we have a look at part B, it says figure 2, so that's this graph here, shows a sketch of the graph having one of the following equations applied to it basically. So we have to decide what's happened to this graph. So if we look at the original graph, the best thing to do is focus on a coordinate, okay? So we focus on this bit, and on the original graph is 6, 0. So I'm just going to write that there. And then it's gone to 10, 0, hasn't it? So effectively what's happened here is I've added 4 on the x coordinate, okay? That's effectively what's happened, isn't it? So which one of these, that's what we need to ask ourselves, is going to affect the x coordinate? Well, it has to be this top one. Like I mentioned with part A, anything inside brackets that's involving the x affects the x axis, okay? And only the x axis. If we then look at the height of our graph, the only thing that's been affected, can you see? It's definitely the x coordinate. It's gone from 2 to 6. So again, it follows in line with this, isn't it? It's been added 4. The height of the graph, that's the y-axis, is still 5. So nothing has affected the y-axis. So it has to be this one. That's the only one that is going to affect the x-axis. Everything is couched inside those brackets. You can see if you look at the second example, this q part is outside the bracket, which means it doesn't affect the x-axis. It affects something else. Same as this one. You've got a number out in front, so it's not couched inside those brackets, which means that number is not going to affect anything to do with x, okay? So the only one that affects anything to do with x is the one that's included in the brackets, okay, couched inside. So it has to be this one. And remember, we do the opposite, don't we? Like here, instead of dividing by 2, we multiplied by 2. So inside that bracket, it needs to be the opposite of adding 4, because that's actually what's happened, isn't it, in terms of the numbers? But what we want to do is the opposite. So we'll say it's f of x -4. So it's the reverse of what's actually happened. So that really is the expression that we would write, the equation that we would write, or the translation that we would write what's actually happened to that graph.